Hello everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about the basics of studio light or strobe lights. So this is the very basics. The intent of this video is for those who have never or are just beginning with strobe lights to get some tips and get going so that you're not intimidated by them. So I took this picture or a selfie or self-portrait basically using this softbox that you see on the right with my camera, and I'll explain to you what this calibration tool is used for. So let's look at first at a video that I put together. Basically what it will show for the next 10 minutes is basically everything that I did, and then I'm going to take about 5 minutes in Lightroom to show you a couple of things.
So it occurred to me that I don't see a lot of videos on the basics of using strobe lights, and I think a lot of people find it intimidating when it should not be. It looks intimidating, but it's actually relatively simple. So I'm using a brown color power pack, but it doesn't matter which one you use. They usually all have the same controls. Nowadays, a lot of these controls are on the strobe, okay? So this is the strobe or the light, okay? So, and I decided to put a softbox because that's one of the most common uses. The other thing is, well, you can see with the light, this is the light that I have here, which is, you can see that there is shadow because it's very close to the wall. So we're trying to minimize the shadow by using soft light or a softbox. So let's see what we have here and show you some of the controls. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, and so most of them have, obviously on and off button. Okay, here is the power. So right now it's at 6.1. So I'm going to put it at the minimum for now. Then here you have, usually they all have modeling light. So modeling light means that you can see kind of like a preview before you take the shot. So there is a little bit of shadow, but you can see there is a lot less shadow than, well, now because both lights are on. But anyway, so let's continue here. What else is here? Well, brown color has its own radio. Most important thing is there is always something here called sync, right? You can see sync. It doesn't matter what you use. You can use a radio transmitter like this one, or any for that matter. Want to make sure that the cable is the correct one for your lights and for your transmitter. So in this case, this is a cable that is used for the brown color and the pocket whizzers. Okay, so first thing, so everything is connected, nothing, no big deal. What we're gonna do is just do a test shot. So it's good to see if it's working. So it is working. Good. So let's now go to more of what we have here. The other thing I have here is my camera, and this is something called a calibration tool, and it's very inexpensive. You can find it on the internet, and it's used for white balance. So you have here to set your white balance, but it's also used for exposure, and I'm going to tell you how we do that. So here we have the strobe light, okay, and I'm gonna be standing here and see if all this that I'm gonna show you actually works. Now, something I want to show you is a lot of people think, oh my God, all that light is going to have a problem when you're in a studio. So let's take a picture. Okay, so let's look first at the settings that we have here. The settings that we have in the camera. I have 1/200th of a second, f8, ISO 100, and I have the white balance set at, let's see, is at 5500K. Okay, so usually that's, like daylight. My lights are set up for that. So I'm gonna take a picture without. So you see the lights are on, but because you're at 250 of a second, it's all dark. So that's why when they say when you're using strobes, you're basically eliminating all the ambient light, okay? So now let's turn it back on, okay? So now we're gonna test it. Yes, so everything is working. So how do we use this calibration tool? The way we use this calibration tool is very simple. So you see what I'm seeing. By the way, obviously that's not the light, because right now this light that you're seeing is the light from here, which is just a regular light. So to see if this is properly exposed, I'm just gonna take a picture, okay? So if we look at the histogram, this says that this is properly exposed. Of course, I set it at f8, but let me, just for the heck of it, let's put oh, this is interesting. Okay, so let's put it at 5.6. It should be now overexposed by a stop. You can see, so before and after, okay? So let's go back to the setting. So we're gonna put it at 8. The other thing that you can use is a light meter, which is what I like to use, okay? If you get serious about strobe lighting, I recommend that you get a light meter. There are usually, some of them are expensive, but for the most part they are not that expensive. So how do you use the light meter? Well, let's pretend this is the phase, right? And 250th of a second or 200 is the same thing. You can see that if I put it, the shutter speed, it doesn't change. So it's 8.0.3, so you kind of round. So it's basically 8, okay? So we have everything set at 8. Now what we're gonna do is, I have it all the way zoomed in, and what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna put it more like at 50, which is more or less the, so this is, I'm gonna stand there now. So let's see what happens, okay? And, you'll get it. I'm actually, no, I want you to see everything, okay? So I want you to see everything that I'm seeing. Okay, so I'm gonna put it that way so that you don't, so it doesn't flash at you. Oh, well, I need to put it on a timer. So I'm gonna put this on a timer. Take the shot. Okay, so what's happening? What's happening is this is an autofocus, and I forgot to pre-focus first. So again, let's pretend this is me. Okay. Let's pre-focus. So this is my, by the way, I don't like to use the live view for focusing, but anyway, let me just take the live view for a second. Okay, so now it's in focus. So what do? You basically now put it manual because it's already in focus. Oh my God, I think I moved it. No big deal. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so now we are ready. We're gonna go now and push a button. So let's see how the picture came out. Not bad. Well, it cut my head a little bit, but you know, exposure wise is really what I care about. I'm actually gonna take another one because, so I'm gonna pause this. So the only thing I did is I changed the height a little bit. So now I'm gonna test the light. 8.0, which is what I want. Now I have the timer here. So, sorry. Sometimes I forget that I'm holding the camera. Oh my God. I forgot to pre-focus. Okay, we're gonna try this once more. Timer mode. So let's see how it came out. Yeah, I mean, it's still cutting part of my head off, but right now, what I'm most interested is the exposure. It's perfect exposure, and this is really what we're looking for. It's at 50 millimeters, and you know, this is, again, I'm trying to show you the basics. This is a very small space. You can see in the history, actually, it's a tiny bit underexposed. But I'll show you in a second what happens is that here in the histogram, it takes into account everything. So obviously here is a little underexposed, but the face is okay. And that's what we care about. And I'll show you in Lightroom how to see that the face is well exposed. Because it's on the side, then, you know, obviously there is more light on this side than on this side. Again, this is just the basics. We will do many other things in other videos on more than one light and how to, but you can see that I did a pretty good job of removing the shadows. I mean, the shadow was huge. And again, this is more of a headshot. So let me, you know, I'm going to take one more picture. It bothers me a little bit that I cut off the head so much. It would have been a lot easier just to put it vertical. But anyways, this is a headshot with one light, and I think it's actually pretty good. We'll take.
So that's the video. I apologize that I had to take the same shot several times, but you know, I want you to see the mistakes that I make, because it's very easy to edit and that everything is perfect when it really isn't. So let me go through this very quickly. I know that the video has taken a little long. So the first thing I wanted to show you is when we have this tool, okay, in Lightroom, it's very easy to see, you know, to see the proper exposure. So you go to the develop mode, okay, and basically you can see the exposure here right away. One second, I'm having a little problem here. I'm going to the develop mode. Okay, here we go. Should I close all these panels? So when you go to the develop mode, if you basically crop this, you can see what the exposure is. And because of so you can see that the shadows are a little bit less exposed than see, so this is the exposure. This is the shadows, this is the whites, and this is and here you can, if it's right in the middle, that means that it's properly exposed, okay? So so now let's go and take a look at some of the pictures. So the picture that I took was really this one, right? Now, what I did, very, very simple editing. I wanted to whiten the background a little bit. So basically what I did is, and again, this is not a class on Lightroom, but I want to show you basically what I did. God, I'm gonna pause this for a second. So this is a duplicate, and I'll show you everything that I did, okay? Basically, the first thing that I did was to, to crop it a little bit. I decided to go with the square mode, okay? So, and then the trick that I did in order to do the background like that is very simple. What you do is you take one of these brushes, okay? So you see this brush, and I put the exposure a stop and a half, and then just painted it, okay? And you can see here what I painted, okay? So you just paint the background, and you have to be a little careful so that it's not so that you don't go over the shirt and all that. But basically that's it. I didn't do much retouching. Oh, I increased the exposure about a third because I realized, so this is when you crop and you look at the eyes, I wanted the eyes to be a little bit brighter, so that's why I increased the exposure a little bit. The clarity just a little bit, to give it a little bit more contrasty punch. I sharpened it a little bit, but very, very minor touches. Nothing in Photoshop, and basically this is part one of the basics of studio lighting. I really want people to start using their strobes. Now you can buy very, very inexpensive the Flashpoint, the Django, and don't be afraid of them, because the advantage of strobes is you saw that big softbox. It's very difficult to do that with a flash. You will see in my channel there's tons of videos on flash. That's actually my specialty, speedlight. But I really want people to not be intimidated by studio lights. I purposely did this video with only one light. In the next video, I'm going to use two lights, and then I'm going to use, I only have two lights, so I'm going to use two lights, and then I'm going to use my flash as a third light. So I'm going to use the flash and the lights combination, and then I'm going to use reflectors. So for example, here in the neck, you can put a reflector on the bottom, and it will light the net. I purposely did this, one side is more exposed than the other, because when you do portraits with female models or with women in general, it looks really nice if the whole face is perfectly lit. But in this case, this is not my intent. I like when there's a little contrast. Sorry, plus I was trying to avoid the shadows, and then the shadow on the wall, and it was in a very small space. That's the other thing. I did all these things, I did it on purpose, because you hear a lot of things, oh, you need a huge studio. Well, I did this in a very small room, one of my bedrooms. I just empty a little bit, and just put the strobe, the camera, and the light, self portrait. So easier than that, simpler than that, you really can't beat. Well, we're almost at the 20-minute mark, and I like to make these videos usually shorter. So I hope you enjoyed it and that you learned something, and please put something in the comments, any questions that you have or any doubts. Thank you.